You're listening to Theater and College Hoops. I am Subi. Alongside me, Taylor Dammel. We are brought to you by Belly Up Media. Go download, subscribe, rate, and review us on whichever device it is that you use. Your college hooper of the day, Taylor. It's not a random obscure person. It's a current player and a very, very good current player and a very notable name. It's Caleb Love. It's Valentine's Day. As we're recording, I had to go with our guy, our probable Pac-12 player of the year, which, by the way, Taylor, I don't know if you heard this real quick. I'll bring you in. The game against Colorado. I love Dave Pasch. I think he's great. But he was referencing KJ Simpson as probable Pac-12 player of the year. I was like, look across to the other bench. I love KJ Simpson too, but no, Caleb Love is the front runner. Is he not? Am I missing something?
I mean, even if KJ was so far and ahead of anyone else in the league, they're not even a tournament team right now. Like today, they're not a tournament team. So I don't know how you wouldn't give it to the best player on the best team, who at this point is projected to be a 1 seed. And I'm not talking about like the best player who's like, oh, well, he's like 14, 4-2, but he's the best player on the team. Like, no, Caleb Love's averaging like 20 points a game. I mean, he straight up I think he has got the most 30-point games of any player in the Pac-12 this year. So it's like, no, man, this is, we're not going to give it to a dude who's finishing like 500 in an awful conference. We're probably going to give it to the best player on the best team, who just happens to potentially actually be the best player in the conference as well.
Outside of that little commentary, I love Dave Pasch, and that game was great. But that was a little blip. But Caleb Love, of course, like I said, Valentine's Day, we got to go with the theme. He is your college hooper of the day. Check out the website at theaterandcollegehoops.com and make sure to follow me at CBB Theater to find out where the feet is. You should also follow Taylor at Taylor Dammel. Let's open the curtains. Taylor, welcome back. Like we had mentioned, it is Valentine's Day. We did a little bit of Valentine's Day chatter last week. It's also a big day for the state of Arizona, is it not?
It is. It is the state of Arizona's 112th birthday today. So we're celebrating that here locally. I guess we're celebrating. So it's Arizona Beer Week too, which is a good combination.
It's a good way to celebrate. Do they still have on the state signs like the centennial birthday?
No, they actually just did a whole bunch of new ones.
Okay, thank God. Because when I went back for my wedding, and I don't know the logistics and how long it takes to take those down. I'm sure it's not of huge urgency. I get that. But they kept having the centennial up for what would it have been? 2010? 2012. Yeah. Math. Jeez, we are in 2024, aren't we?
Yeah.
But okay,
I just wanted to confirm. It's not a math problem. It's just forgetting that we're this far along into the 2020s, let's call it. So
that's true.
No, they just did a bunch of whole new signage this last year or so. Although I say the last year, it probably was like 5 years ago now, since we're on the path of not remembering where we're at in time. So great state of Arizona. Things have changed quite a bit in those 112 years, as you would imagine. Arizona basketball still good though, 112 years later. So I wonder what their record was in 1912. I'll look that up.
That'd be something. You mentioned in the intro about tournament teams in Colorado, if they're a tournament team or not. This is now, Taylor, the time where I think we can really identify and have 10 toes deep into what we think a team's identity is and how we forecast them moving forward. We've had enough season, I think, at this point. We're going to get to some teams in the top 25 and also teams that are knocking on the top 25, but we have to start with the news of the day in college basketball. Chris Holtmann is out at Ohio State, approaching 7 years, which is actually kind of crazy when you think about it. You talk about the 2020s and how we're moving right along. Chris Holtmann, it's kind of crazy to think that he's been in Columbus for this long, but he is no longer there. And he will be looking for a new job if he so desires. But Taylor, initial thoughts for me before I kick it to you is that it was time. The last couple of seasons have been really bad in Columbus. especially with their expectations. Now, you can say that they are a football school, which they very clearly are, but they also have a decent history when it comes to basketball. I would say a top 13, 14 program in the history of college basketball. And even in recent memory, they've been to Final Fours, they've been to Elite Eights, they've produced some good talent, but the well has run dry in Columbus without a doubt. And I think it's so interesting. Folks are going to say that the Big Ten schedule wore them down, and their last loss was against Wisconsin. So they'll make a joke with Rothstein, how he always calls Greg Gard the silent assassin. But really, this all went completely downhill in on that fateful day in March. Really, when they were the number 2 seed, and Max Abmas and Oral Roberts and Paul Mills played them and defeated them in shocking fashion, because that Buckeyes team was really good. But ever since then, it seems as if Chris Holtmann and the Buckeyes program has been completely broken. This was kind of expected in college basketball circles. What I think is unexpected is the timing of it all. Your thoughts on Holtmann no longer at the helm?
I think how I feel about Holtmann is similar to how I feel about Ohio State basketball in general. You referenced them as one of the top 10 or 12 programs in the history of college basketball, which is true. Problem is much of that storied history is pre what we would consider the modern era of college basketball, which is, I believe, is 1981 and on, or some people take it to the 3-point line, which is 1988, 89, 88, 89, somewhere in there. They haven't been outside of, the Mike Conley, Greg Oden years, where they did go to a Final Four and were, one of the best teams in the country. They haven't exactly lit the world on fire, even when Thad Matta was there. I mean, Thad Matta, gets a lot of credit, and is kind of I don't want to say he's a cult icon at Ohio State, but it's weird that Ohio State just isn't very good at basketball. They're good. They're not very good. Texas and USC are the 3 basketball teams that I constantly, and I think we've harped on this for however long we've been doing this podcast, however long we had a radio show before that, and however long we've known each other. Really, we've kind of continued to have the same discussion about Ohio State and Texas and USC. It's like those 3 schools arguably have the most resources of any schools in the country, right? And they're in pretty good recruiting areas, or at least close, and they never can be consistently good at basketball. Like Holtmann made the tournament 4 times, I think. But as a whole, Ohio State has only made the tournament 31 total times, which puts them outside of like the top 25, I believe, in terms of tournament appearances. So it's really interesting that no matter who they have there, it kind of continues to follow the same path. And if you look at the list of coaches, we've brought up schools that have sneaky good coaching history, like a Long Beach State that has like 5 Hall of Fame coaches. Ohio State doesn't really have a deep coaching history either, in terms of, maybe basketball people would recognize their names, but we're certainly not, the general public certainly not fawning over guys like Fred Taylor or
Jim O'Brien there
Jim
before Thad Matta.
O'Brien. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Gary Williams was there for 2 years, but, tell me what Randy Ayers was under 500. Eldon Miller was just above 500. They don't really have a ton of coaches who are even over 500 in their time there. So it's really interesting school to follow. Holtmann, I guess it was time, in the sense that at some point Ohio State's got to do something, but I'm just not sure what they're supposed to do at this point, because they just seemingly can't make that hire that puts them over the top or matches what their expectations are for their school. So I guess, I don't know. Yeah, it's not unexpected if you've been paying attention to college basketball. They certainly, like you said, are above 500 right now.
Are
When
they?
you,
By
yeah,
what, like 1 or 2 games?
14 and 11, I think. And
Okay.
so
That's not that great in college
no,
basketball,
no,
by the
no.
way.
But how you determine and when you determine to fire a coach in college is really interesting, especially with NIL, transfer portal, things of that nature. I bet in years past, 5 years ago, they wait till the end of the year to hire a new coach. But now, with all the moving pieces that there are in college basketball, it's maybe a little better to get out ahead of the game a little bit. Diebler, which, how crazy is it that John Diebler is their interim coach, by the way? That makes me
What,
feel
right now?
old.
No,
I believe
Diebler's on staff at Butler.
is he? Well, that was
Yeah.
interesting, because
Him and
Wow.
Odom.
So
You want to bring those back? I thought you were saying throw John Diebler in as the
Jake
next head
Diebler.
coach.
Excuse me. Jake
Jake
Diebler.
Diebler. Oh, well, okay.
Excuse
So
me.
you weren't wrong.
My bad. My bad. Yeah. Sorry. I just saw Diebler and went straight to that. So, excuse me. A Diebler is their interim coach. But overall, long story short here, it was probably time that Holtmann's era was over, whether it be mid-year or now. And I think just with the current landscape of college basketball, it's probably a little more advantageous to get out ahead of it, so you can start to figure out who's even going to be on the team next year, and then you can really start dialing in your coach before the end of the year. So we know that Musselman is. We've already reported here rumors that he's been angling for a new job, so maybe this would be a good situation for him to try and angle for.
The timing on the surface is kind of peculiar, but you're right. With all the moving parts in college basketball, NIL transfers, it's huge to get ahead of it. And you also got to look at their rival in Michigan. They probably want to get their man before Michigan does, because I don't know what the future holds for Juwan Howard, and I'm actually going to bring him up a little later. But and Ward Manuel, the AD for Michigan, I think basically said, "I'm not making any decisions." At this time, and who's to say that Ward Manuel can get Juwan Howard out of there before Juwan Howard gets himself out of there? Juwan Howard has a plethora of options. He can go to the NBA. He's got a lot of connections there. He's going to be just fine. Juwan Howard's going to be fine. And if he says to himself, I don't want to deal with this anymore, then he can go. So Ohio State, I feel like part of it is they're monitoring what's going on in Ann Arbor, and they're saying, I don't want to let them get a guy that we might want. And so it's actually kind of funny comparing it to Michigan. Like Harbaugh, I forget when Harbaugh came to Michigan, but it might have been a few years prior, like 4 years prior to Chris Holtmann going to Ohio State. And then, of course, Juwan Howard at Michigan, and then Ryan Day at Ohio State. So you look at that quartet right there, right? There was a time when people were saying, we want to fire Harbaugh because he just can't beat Ohio State. And then he ends up winning a national title. Now people want the discussion is we need to fire Ryan Day because he now has lost 3 straight to Michigan, and they can't get over the hump and win a national title. He's still there, right? Harbaugh obviously took off to the Chargers. He hasn't been fired. And now Juwan, after a Sweet 16 appearance, I think they also went to the Elite Eight against UCLA. He's still technically there, but the writing's kind of on the wall because they only have 8 wins. The first person out of that quartet to actually be fired was Chris Holtmann. And I don't know if we saw this coming a couple years back. I don't know if this was something that was on any of our bingo cards, because it has been such a precipitous fall. At a place like Ohio State, you don't need to be world beaters. They're not expecting a Final Four every single year, but you can't be this abysmal. And so it brings me to my next point, Taylor. Potential replacements. I tweeted this out this morning, and this was kind of a hodgepodge of what I think is realistic and also just kind of fantasy land. And some of the names that popped up to me in no particular order. First of all, Will Wade. I want him back in high major hoops. And he's done a tremendous job with McNeese State. And I want to see a villain back on the sideline in high major hoops. Go get Will Wade. It's a win-win-win for all of us, right? Win for the program, win for Will, and also win for the fans. Danny Sprinkle. How many years have I been talking about Danny Sprinkle, man? And he deserves a high shot. And I'm dead serious when I tell Buckeyes fans to do their research on Sprinkle and try and go get him, because it may not be the sexiest, because you probably don't know who he is, but he's going to win some games. Josh Schertz at Indiana State. I talked about him and the great job he's doing. Obviously, they lost to Illinois State, which wasn't great the last couple nights. But Josh Schertz would be a nice get. Chris Beard, if you want a big name, try and go get Chris Beard, who's an immediate impact guy. He can win anywhere he wants. Texas Tech. He had Texas humming before the incident that forced him to be removed, or he removed himself, whatever it was. And now Ole Miss, they're kind of fading, but they're a bubble team, which is a lot more than people expected. Mick Cronin, he knows the area. We talked about Cronin. And actually, UCLA, funny enough, is turning things around, and they still have an outside shot at the dance, but they haven't been that good. Cronin knows the area. And he let out a Freudian slip by basically saying UCLA's NIL funds are the Reds. So maybe he just wants to go back to Ohio. I don't know. Eric Musselman, you already mentioned, and maybe our old friend Sean. Those are just some names that come to my mind. Any out of that list that you like? Any names that I didn't mention that you like?
So let me go back just 1 second here. And that's, Chris Holtmann's best year at Ohio State was his first year there. That was his most wins, was 25 wins. Never had more than 21 wins in any other season at Ohio State. So COVID, maybe they could have, but even so, that would have been maybe 22 wins. So not like a ton here, right? So I think that's part of it. Part of the firing here is like the only season you've been good is almost like a why can't I think of UConn's old coach who won
Kevin
it the
Ollie.
first? Kevin Ollie. Yeah, where it's like, yeah, the first year they were dope, and then things fell off a cliff from there. They didn't fall off a cliff at Ohio State. They just never went up the they never went up the hill either. They kind of flatland there. So Sean Miller makes a lot of sense here to me. And I know that I'm a Sean guy, right? But it really does make a lot of sense given everything that we know about Sean Miller, right? We know that he's a good coach. We know that he is very good. I think Sean's best trait is doing more with less. I think at Arizona, often he had more, but wasn't used to understanding how to coach more to make them better than coaching less, right? And Ohio State is like the perfect spot for something like that because they're going to have the funding and everything that they want to do, but they're not world beaters. And I think that how they recruit is perfect for someone like, or how they could recruit is perfect for someone like Sean Miller, where he can now have his experience of having been at Xavier twice and then a top 7 or 8 school in Arizona, and then kind of meld that all together into a school that certainly has the opportunity to be as good as any of the blue bloods. They aren't a blue blood, but on a year by year basis, they certainly could be as good as any blue blood. I think that's the most intriguing name to me because I think everything just fits so ideally. I think it would be more up to Sean if he wants to leave his current situation in Xavier, because we know that he has serious love for Xavier. Another one that has been discussed is like a Lamont Paris, South Carolina. There you got Dusty May at FAU as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting. Ohio State, schools like Ohio State often fall into the maybe retread, not Ohio State, but coaches, teams that are looking for instant success that just haven't had it, often look for that retread coach. Like Sean Miller, you could probably consider him to be a retread rather than, or even like a Chris Mack. I don't know. I wouldn't hire him either, but I think someone like a Lamont Paris or Dusty May, if they're willing to give these guys a couple of years to build what they want, that would be worthwhile. But I'm not sure Ohio State fans and alumni and people have enough patience. Like you said, they want to fire Ryan Day, who's lost 4 total games like in 5 years, right? Like,
Yeah.
or what? I know that's not the actual stat. Actually, could be the actual stat, but I know that's not the actual stat. So I would just be a little leery, even though I think Sean Miller would be a great person to look into here. I'd be a little leery of hiring one of these retreads, and I think that if I could give any Ohio State fan some advice, it would be you're going to need an abundance of patience if you really want this to be successful. So I think that I would either go, if I was going for someone that was currently available or currently coaching at a high major school, let's call it, I'd go Sean Miller. If not, I would look at, like Dusty May, Lamont Paris type of direction there. I'm
Well,
not
I
sure I'd
said
go with like Musselman, who's like kind of out at Arkansas.
he
That
turns
kind of seems,
programs around though.
but that does kind of seem like the definition of the retread guy is
Yeah.
like, and same with Mick Cronin.
Yeah.
Mick Cronin's got an super weird. It's weird, I think, is the best way to describe his situation at UCLA right now. And this might be the perfect out for him. But I'm not sure if that's the route I would go if I was Ohio State.
That's why I think they really should hone in on Danny Sprinkle, because he's not
Right.
He's super young. He's proven he can win and get to the NCAA tournament with mid majors. And I don't think, unless like a blue blood calls or a top 5 program calls Danny Sprinkle, he's going to leave or want to leave. Lamont Paris does have Ohio ties. I find it interesting about Paris, though, who is probably the front runner for national coach of the year this year. He's done an amazing job, certainly, but that didn't happen overnight in Columbia. This has taken some time for the Gamecocks to get as good as they've been. And even this year, they were picked to finish dead last. So I wonder if this happened at this juncture last year, Lamont Paris wouldn't be on anyone's radar. It's kind of crazy what 3/4 of a season can do for your stock. And I guess you got to strike while the iron's hot. I just don't know if I've seen enough from Lamont Paris. He did a great job at Chattanooga. He's doing a good job this year with South Carolina, but I think Ohio State might want to go with a potentially more proven commodity. And then I heard some people mentioning Greg McDermott's name, and that just
I don't get that at all.
baffles me, man. He's a legend in Omaha. That team is always competitive. They were on the cusp of a Final Four. Outside of funds and resources, money, whatever, I don't see it for Greg McDermott. And I'm not going to pretend to know, say like I know who Greg McDermott is as a person, but he does not seem like a guy who is, oh, the grass is greener on the other side because of cash. This is a guy who saw his son come up through that same college, and he's been there forever. He is a pillar of the community. He doesn't seem like a guy who would just jump to Ohio State where he's got to fight, not even fight. You're not fighting for attention at Ohio State because it's always going to be majority on the football program. Whereas Creighton, do they even have a football team? I don't know. Like the Greg McDermott stuff is super, super confusing and odd to me.
Yeah, I don't get the McDermott one at all either. I mean, right now he is making 2.3, I think, a year million. He's just maybe outside of the top 25. But I'm guessing with his success and where he's gotten Creighton basketball to, if this dude wanted more money, I don't think it would be that hard to get it from Creighton, right?
Call up Warren Buffett. Doesn't he like run that place?
Or literally just anybody in Omaha, right? So your points about him and why he fits at Creighton, and in my opinion should fit at Creighton for the rest of his career, is perfect, because I don't really think, even if Ohio State in theory has more resources, I'm not sure they have more resources that are just specifically earmarked for basketball, right?
Great
And
point.
you said that in a way, right?
That's a great specification.
Right. But that is like, okay, so Ohio State, as a wide reaching general sense, certainly has more resources, probably more resources than like I brought up earlier, than almost everyone other than like Texas and USC, right? But basketball specifically, I'm not sure they got any more resources than an Auburn or a Creighton or a in a Gonzaga, any of those type of schools, where these schools that are since Auburn's a basketball school now, these schools that are so basketball centric, and Auburn really has become basketball centric, but I don't think that they have any more resources or care. Specifically, the care part of it, I think, is the key. Creighton, they're going to sell out 19,000 seats every single night. And even though Ohio State essentially plays in an NBA arena, even though there isn't an NBA team in Columbus, people are not, I don't know, they'd rather go to a Columbus Blue Jackets game, I think, than an Ohio State basketball game. So if you're not even bigger than your NHL team in town, you're probably not one of the most, resource-laden basketball programs in the country. So, yeah, everyone, I think, on the surface would be like, well, yeah, Ohio State, they got tons of money. But that doesn't necessarily mean it goes to basketball.
Yeah, McDermott, it's very peculiar hearing his name. Who knows? Maybe we'll be shocked. But if we want to get wacky and crazy, though, Taylor, let's just swap Thad Matta for
exactly where I was going on the next. Yeah,
just a couple of homecomings, either that or just bring back, like I said, Odin and Diebler. Why not?
What's Aaron Kraft doing right now? Is he available?
He's like a neurosurgeon, man. He doesn't want to coach.
Of course he is. What a loser. What a nerd. Poor man's TJ McConnell. Thad Matta. So I haven't looked at a single report about Thad Matta, so I have no thought on this. But why? What would be the reason to not try and bring him back? Just because of his age?
Well, he's not even. He just looks old, man.
Well, I know, but he's not even old.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like people think Thad Matta is this 75-year-old guy. He's like in his 50s or 60s, maybe.
He's like,
compare him next to Pete Carroll. It's actually insane. But I don't know. You talk about retread, man. That's you cannot get more retread than Thad Matta, and that's what they're doing at Xavier right now.
So Thad Matta is the same age as 1 year older than Sean Miller, which is absolutely hilarious. 55 and 56. But he's not a retread in that he got fired. A retread, in my opinion, is someone who gets fired or unceremoniously leaves, right? Because of his performance. Thad Matta didn't leave because of his performance. It was that his body wasn't performing, and that's not to be funny, but that's what was happening, right? So it's not like if Thad Matta wasn't coaching, this would be completely off the table, right?
Mm.
But he is. He's coaching just kind of down the street a little bit at Butler. So, and again, he didn't go like the Patino route to like an Iona and then to a St. John's and whatever. Like this guy's coaching a high major, good basketball team that's potentially going to make the tournament this year. So it's not like he's running from the grind portion of the program, right? Where he doesn't want to recruit. He doesn't want to do this every day. Like he's doing that right now. So I know it's not going to happen, right? But it is an interesting situation here. And because we're talking about retreads and Sean Miller, that's where we're at with Sean Miller. Sean Miller,
Right.
Xavier, Arizona Xavier. So I mean, it's not like it hasn't been done with before, and it's not like it hasn't been done recently. It's not like it hasn't been done in the same state. So I I would maybe think about that. I don't know because he like I said, I think people were gonna poo-poo this thought, thinking that Thad Matta is like 98 years old. This dude's just same age as all these other coaches, essentially, we're talking about. Um, and if you're gonna consider Sean Miller, why wouldn't you consider Thad Matta? Just
They
what right? I mean, they have
they
very
have a lot
similar
of options.
resumes. Yeah,
I'm
right.
telling
And
you, they have a ton of options in Columbus, and I actually think they can get their guy. And we talk about the lack of focus, relatively speaking, to football, but this is a desirable job. I'm not saying it's a
yeah,
top five,
hmm
top 10, top 10. I don't know if I'd say it's a top 10 job, but it's a very desirable
top
job. They have
20, top
top
20.
20. Awesome NIL. Like they have awesome resources. They have support. Um, so this is a very desirable job for someone, and I think they need to it's going to be on the administration to make the right hire, because it's not going to be as a result of like lack of applicants or lack of heads out there, in my eyes.
Well, look at the three schools in the in that general area that are big basketball schools that might be on the coaching hunt this year. And maybe this is why Holtmann, you already brought up Michigan, right? But Louisville's going to be on the hunt as well.
Indiana might be.
Indiana, thank you. Yeah, that's where I was going with that too. So if you look at the four jobs, let's call it, that are in that area, three Big Ten, and one ACC in Louisville. Oh, I think Ohio State's program is in the best spot of any of those four currently. Indiana, if you talk about Ohio State having unrealistic expectations,
Yeah.
Indiana has absurdly unrealistic expectations, and they don't have any more. Although their money is mostly funneled to basketball, um, I think their expectations and just kind of where they sit currently isn't more advantageous than Ohio State. Michigan is in the doldrums of despair right now in terms of where their basketball program is at. Louisville has the
Some are
most,
worse.
well, they have the most resources for basketball specifically of any school in the country, and that's true. I mean, they make more money on basketball from a profitability standpoint than any other school in the country. But they're so bad. Like, I mean, that you would have to literally like get out your hammer and your shovel and start rebuilding the foundation
You
of the
got the
whole
house.
program. You have no, it's a teardown. Yeah.
Yeah.
So um I think Ohio State, if you look at the major schools that are in that region that are going to be looking for new coaches this year, I think they're at the top. I know that they're not as good. They're the fourth best basketball program of those schools that we just listed, right? But they
Yeah. I
have
mean, Michigan's had much more success
right.
just
But
over the last 10 years.
even though we talked about how their resources aren't basketball specific, Michigan's aren't either, right? And so I think that would be the best job to take. You have the lowest expectations and probably the best returning roster or potential returning roster of any of those schools. So I think that's why you get out ahead of it if you're them, because you know that you're competing with these very specific other basketball programs with very legitimate resources all in the same area.
Seemed calculated for sure. I love a good carousel, man. I love a good coaching carousel, and we got one here in February. Like I said, Chris Holtmann, I still think is a pretty good coach. He's gonna find, you know what, Chris Holtmann, come over to DePaul, man. Why don't you rebuild that program? Come to Chicago. You'll still be in a major conference, and maybe give it one last shot.
So one more thing before we roll on to the next topic here, and I don't know if this is accurate, and maybe you can correct me on this. I feel like this last year, and by last year I mean like literally last month, we saw the craziest coaching carousel in football we've seen in recent times, and all of
In the
that is
NFL.
no, in college football. like look at Alabama, Saban
Oh,
leaving
yes.
sent
Sorry.
like a crazy,
Harbaugh left. Yeah.
yeah, right. Where we've seen these crazy moves of like, obviously we dealt with it very specifically in Arizona, where one of our coaches got taken, and then we had to do the same, whatever. So I wonder, it'll be interesting to watch come late March, early April, if that same NIL transfer portal situation in terms of coaching carousels and how it affects everybody works the same as it does in football. I have no opinion on if it is or not. I'm just saying that it's going to be really interesting. Okay, we just saw this happen in football to kind of a crazier degree than we've ever seen in terms of like the timing of these things. It's always been you got to make a decision today, but now it's like with coaching, you got to make a decision within the hour almost. So I'll be interested to see how Ohio State maybe being the first domino to fall of what could be a very major coaching search that affects, like, especially if Cronin goes there, then UCLA open, I mean, there's so much that could happen here in terms of how the coaching carousel is going to go. So I just wanted to bring that up because the football one was so interesting. It's college sports. We'll see if it similarly affects basketball in the same way.
All right, T, let's move on now to our identity lock segment. All right. Just catching folks up to speed. February 14th for me specifically is when I have a good feel of what a team is, who they are, their identity really. Okay. So this is to say when everyone tries to bait you and tries to have these stupid discussions in November and December and January about, oh, this team's done. Oh, this team's going to the Final Four. And then they lose 2 or 3 straight. We talked to Ali Faroukmanesh. She was like, we lost to Wyoming and everyone says we're done. We're terrible. And then they rattled off 3 or 4 straight. Oh no, they're back. They're a potential Final Four team again, or they're a dangerous team to look out for. I really do hate having those conversations so early around Thanksgiving and Christmas and even like MLK Day. But Taylor, when we hit February 14th, Valentine's Day, I do think we can now have these conversations. And I think this is when people need to start sticking their stakes in the ground for certain teams. And there's a lot of teams that I think have questions. There's certainly some teams that do not have questions, like a UConn, a Purdue, a Houston. I think after this past weekend, Arizona. Um, Tennessee, I think a lot of people still really like, and I still really like Tennessee. But I'm talking about teams that have maybe floundered here the last couple of weeks or the last week even, and just have shown some serious weaknesses over the course of the year. And I'm going to start with Kansas. Just get what I want to do, Taylor, is just get a quick opinion on each of these teams because we do have a lot to get through, and I want to get to segments as well. But we'll start with Kansas here because I think a lot of folks think that they're very good. They obviously haven't had Kevin McCullough the last couple of weeks, but they're dreadful on the road, Taylor. And so I'm still buying Kansas. I think they're still very good, and I don't think that there's any reason to panic because they got absolutely blown out by a good Texas Tech team, by the way, without Kevin McCullough. And I don't think it's necessarily a huge reason to panic because they stink on the road. Because once you get to the NCAA tournament, it's going to be neutral floor number one, but also it's Kansas. You're probably going to have your fans packing the gym. So I'm not worried about Kansas. I haven't really changed or wavered on Kansas, but sitting here, February 14th, I'm still confident in their ability to do some damage. Although that's how I was last year. I think I took them to the Elite Eight, maybe Final Four, and they lost to freaking Arkansas. What do you think about Kansas?
I think that they are not great offensively and they can't rebound the ball. And I think that's a very bad combination when you get to March. They're really good at efficiency in terms of, and they average, I think, the second most assists of any team in the country. And so maybe efficiency is not the way to put it, but they certainly can pass the ball well. I'm fearful of their ability, like you said, to play anywhere but at Allen Fieldhouse. And even their loss to Marquette was neutral floor. So we're not talking about just on the road specifically. We're talking about away. And Marquette's not a bad loss in a neutral site.
Marquette's a great team.
I'm not trying to say that, right? But that is a loss that they do have in a neutral site, right? So if in terms of like worry, what's our level of worry, let's call it, like making it past the first weekend in the tournament?
I don't think I'm worried about that with Kansas.
I would say that
Like, I'd be surprised if they lost.
Sweet 16 is their ceiling. is what I'm thinking. I just don't think that they're good enough offensively, and they can't rebound the ball well enough, and they can't play away from home. Those three combinations, those three things. And if you look at like their wins, uh, I mean, all like you said, all their good wins are at home, and all their losses have been to good teams on the road. And I think if you get them up against a good team in a neutral site in a Sweet 16 type game, because they're not going to be a 1 or 2 seed at this point. So we're not going to get that classic, oh, Kansas gets to play the conference tournament in Kansas, and then they get to play the first round of the tournament in Kansas. That's not going to happen this time around. And I think that's going to be a big deal for them. I don't think they're going to have quite the fan support. They're going to have a ton. Don't get me wrong. They're going to have a ton, but they're not going to be. They're not going to be these home games like we've seen playing the tournament. So I actually do have concern about Kansas. Simply, they have not impressed me in months.
Not even the Houston game. Houston game. That's all they need to do. Just play like that, and they're champions.
So just play their best basketball every game, and they'll be fine.
70+% or so, whatever it is. I will say I'm a little concerned about their depth, but I'm not on the whole not necessarily concerned about the Jayhawks. Moving on. Now I know we're split on this, but you've been proven right the last couple games. That's Carolina. I'll let you take the floor on Carolina, and it doesn't seem like anything's changed.
Well, it's not that I don't think Carolina is good. I think it's Carolina is not as good as the teams that they were being compared to, because just days ago they were being compared to Houston, to Arizona, to Marquette, to those teams. And my opinion was not that UNC sucked, because they definitely don't suck, right? I mean, they're a 2 seed, probably even at right now, even they're not playing very well. They're a 2 seed, probably at worst at this point. My point was that I didn't think they were 1 seed worthy. They started the year, I think, what were they? They were ranked in the teens, I think, preseason. Am I wrong? Yeah, I think so, right? Yeah, because Duke was the only ACC team I think that was in like the top
10.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, I think that's kind of right. They're probably still a little better than that, but they're not the top. They're not the top 5 for me. I think this last week, teams like Arizona, very specifically Arizona, proved that they are a better team than UNC, specifically because of the road games they won. And then, of course, UNC losing at home to Georgia Tech, to Clemson, and then losing on the road at Georgia Tech. And then even at Syracuse. I mean, Syracuse 2 nights ago, Syracuse is they're not a great basketball team. And they really had a lot of opportunities, UNC did, to kind of take that game over. And they allowed 86 points to Syracuse, who's not even a top 150 offensive basketball team. And so to me, I don't think there's one specific thing about North Carolina that I don't like. It's just that all their parts don't seem to work together at the times that they need to work together. So now that's a long way of saying that I'm actually not concerned about them. I just don't think they're like a national championship contender.
Yeah.
I think that they are an Elite 8, Sweet 16 Elite 8 type of team. But if they play like a Tennessee again in the Elite 8, if they play in Arizona, if they play at Purdue, any of those teams, I'm taking those other teams over North Carolina.
Okay, that is fair. I think right now Carolina is just going through a little bit of a funk. No need to panic, Tar Heel Nation. I think you're just fine. I think you're also experiencing a bit of a regression. They were playing some of the best defense I've seen like in years, it felt like, but that's not sustainable. That level of defense is just not sustainable. And we saw that against Syracuse. I think they gave up 20+ points within the first 10 minutes or so on the road. So you're seeing a little bit of a funk, a little bit of a regression. I'm not concerned just yet about Carolina. Duke, I've been saying this for the last month or so. I don't understand why everyone's just saying that. I got who was it? Was it Chris Mack? Chris Mack, who was saying they're soft, and their fans are going crazy saying they're soft. And Jay Williams at halftime is saying, if you got to pee like a puppy, stay on the porch. Duke's doing just fine. Like Duke, Carolina, and I'm always going to side with Carolina, but they're that meme where someone like comes around the office corner or the cube corner and it's Carolina, and the lady's just like, oh, aren't you sweet? And then Duke comes around saying the exact same thing, and it's like, hello, HR. I don't understand why Duke is getting slandered so often as they have been. Jared McCain has been amazing, and he's a great rebounder, and they control their own destiny, by the way, Taylor, in the ACC. So Duke fans, I actually think you need to be a little bit more hyped about this team.
Well, it's because their Georgia Tech loss came earlier in the season than North Carolina's, and so I think people just got a bad impression. And then who else did they lose to?
Pitt, but
Uh,
Pitt's coming
yeah,
on.
you're right, right. Oh, they lost to Arkansas. I had Arkansas
Okay,
as
that's a
well.
bad loss.
Right.
Yeah. So
But at the time, I'm not
no, it
sure it
wasn't.
seemed like that bad of a loss. Um, I still like Duke just simply because I think Flip is better than all but what 4 players in the country. And so I think he's better than anybody on North Carolina. So at this point, I would probably maybe if I was a betting man, I'd maybe take Duke a little further than North Carolina. They're better offensively for sure than North Carolina is, at least from an efficiency standpoint. Um, and I like the fact that you're right. They've got a little chip on their shoulder in the sense that they lost to North Carolina already. I have a feeling they're probably going to win the next one around,
I do
just
too.
because that's how this series goes. And I think that I had some doubts about Shire preseason, right? And if this was going to be, if he was going to be good, bad. I think he's been totally fine this year. I feel like our perception of Duke is just that they lost to like Arkansas and Georgia Tech or whoever it was, like back-to-back games early on, and so people kind of just tossed them by the wayside. But to go along with their loss to Arizona, so they had 3 losses in by like mid-December, and they've only had 2 losses since, I believe. So I'm more bullish on Duke than I am North Carolina.
I disagree with that. I still think Carolina is a better team, but I think Duke is getting a lot of unnecessary hate. Although
I agree.
when it comes to hating Duke, is it really unnecessary?
No,
I don't
you're
know.
right. Did I
I'm,
just
I'm,
defend Duke, by the way?
I'm,
Yeah.
we both are, man. That's how I think ridiculous it's been.
Also, I want to bring up something, okay, as it relates to we're going to call it North Carolina bias, okay? That's what I'm going to call it because I remember many a pool party back in Tucson that
Oh
this
yeah.
man, the host of this show, was wearing Carolina blue a lot of these days. And I never saw. I'm going back in the archives here because now I'm really finding where this deep-seated North Carolina. He keeps
Please
it
note it was an
down.
MJ jersey who everyone loves.
He keeps it down tied under, but this man does own a North Carolina jersey. So I just want to
I
point
don't
that
know
out
where
there
that
for any of the
is.
listeners. Well, I'm
Well,
just
so
saying.
I
It
don't
could
want
be
to support.
honestly, it could be in my garage in a box, to be honest with you. So
You should
who
know I
knows?
got the Richard Jefferson
Yeah.
44 in
Okay.
blue
Perfect.
as well.
Perfect.
South Carolina, Taylor. I think South Carolina plays very good defense. They don't struggle in the half court with their offense. I think they're very efficient there, and they pass. They pass the ball well. Their assist numbers are great. I'm a buyer of South Carolina, and what that means is I think they can get to a round of 32, Sweet 16, which you might say to yourself, well, they're ranked top 10 or top 15. They should be doing much more damage than that. But this has come out of completely nowhere. They were picked dead last. I could see them as a second weekend team for all of those different attributes. Are you buying South Carolina, excuse me, at this juncture?
I want to, but I don't think that I am. I think that at some point this team they're playing extremely well, and like we talked about earlier, Lamont Paris is doing a wonderful job of coaching. You talked about their uh, defensive efficiency, all that. I think at some point there's going to be there's going to be a regression back to and we just talked about North Carolina's gone through it this year, Duke has gone through it this year, Kansas has gone through it this year, Arizona did earlier in this year. So you can't tell me that teams like those five of 7, 8 best teams in the history of college basketball can go through a regression, and South Carolina isn't going to go through a regression at some point this year. So this isn't necessarily just South Carolina based. It's my pessimistic view on that. I think they're overachieving right now, which is great, and I'm rooting for them. I think at some point that regression is going to happen, and it needs to happen in the next 2 weeks, or the timing of this regression is going to be in the first or second week of March, and that's not going to be ideal for them. So I am rooting for South Carolina. I'm not buying them in the tournament just simply because at some point they need to have or will have a bad week or two, and my fear is that it's coming here in about 3 weeks' time.
St. Mary's, I might have to take that stance with the Gales because everything they've showed me in the last 2 months, they haven't lost in 2024, which is insane. They're one of the very, very few teams, maybe 3, that are undefeated in conference play. I think they have a top 15 defense, but that stretch at the beginning of the season, for some reason, is sticking with me. And we're going to talk maybe Gonzaga if we get to them, but Gonzaga just beat Kentucky, and they showed signs that they can go into Rupp and win. Now Kentucky doesn't play defense whatsoever. St. Mary's does, but I'm just saying Gonzaga still has the wherewithal, and I'm not going to remove that crown from Gonzaga until I see it. Right? We talked about Patrick Mahomes and not putting him immediately in the AFC title game. I'm not going to omit Gonzaga until they show me that they aren't going to win the WCC. So I'm not just 100% bought in yet on St. Mary's. I mean, if they go into the tournament or the conference tournament without having lost a game, which is I suppose plausible in the WCC, then I might be looking like a dummy. But I think those early season struggles, for some reason, I can't shake it. So I'm not 100% bought in on St. Mary's despite what they've been doing this year.
So we talked about the early season struggles, right? The early season struggles had losses to Utah, which looked like a bad loss. Maybe isn't as bad of a loss now. Boise State, it, I Xavier, San Diego State. These aren't terrible losses to me. Now, obviously, they did lose to like a Missouri State and a Weaver State in there as well. But the thing that I like about the St. Mary's team, and I'm going to buy the St. Mary's team, is you brought it up. They're top 10 defensive team in the country, right? And that the level of defense that they're at does travel. Kansas, like we said, is a better defensive team. They are an offensive team currently, but they're not as good defensively as St. Mary's. Like St. Mary's is an elite defensive team at this point. And the thing I like about St. Mary's is even though Aiden Mahaney isn't necessarily shooting the ball amazingly, you've got an old point guard with a veteran coach and a team that has gone on the road already and beat their biggest conference rival at home. And then in response to that, blew out the next team they played by 40 plus points, and then blew out the next team they played by 20 plus points. So oftentimes with these kind of mid-level teams, I think we see almost an instant regression, right? They pour it all into the Gonzaga game on the road and then have a stinker coming back. These guys haven't had a stinker. Of course, easy to not have a stinker when you're playing the Sisters of the Poor in
That's
the West
kind of
Coast
where I'm
Conference.
going with my
No,
thought too.
yep, right. But I'm going to say this. I know that they had some early season struggles. But if every year that we give folks, I don't know if it's me, but folks give Gonzaga the benefit of the doubt for winning the West Coast Conference by like not losing a game, then why can't we give St. Mary's a
Because
similar?
St. Mary's doesn't have number 1, 2 overall picks, right? I don't know if Gonzaga's gotten number 1, but they've
They have
had a
like
2
what,
overall pick.
2?
They have NBA players all over the floor, man. Like that's why we give
So
Gonzaga
does
the benefit of the doubt.
Kentucky. So does Kentucky, and they suck.
Yeah,
So,
they get the benefit of the doubt too. That's why I'm not going to give it to St. Mary's.
but and then you brought it up, Gonzaga. Of course, their biggest win is against Kentucky, who's awful defensively, and of course that's why they can't beat St. Mary's because they're awesome defensively. So I don't think it goes either any further than that as a discussion. So I'm going to buy St. Mary's because I think Aiden Mahaney, Randy Bennett, guys who have kind of been there, done that, are playing at a high level, and I don't see that changing. And I think they're going to sweep Gonzaga this year.
Maybe.
You're looking for opinions. I'm saying I think they're gonna.
I mean,
they're gonna sweep
I
Gonzaga.
disagree. I think Gonzaga is going to have a bit of pride. But let's go to a team that was formerly in the WCC, BYU. Incredible offense. They're still holding strong in the Big 12. I suppose the question is, what are the expectations? Do I think that they're a second weekend team? Maybe I do, but they're good, right? So like this is one of those deals where November, December, you say, oh, BYU's kind of playing really well. I think they may have even cracked the top 10, top 15 for sure, but they are who they are. Like BYU is a good basketball team, and this is going to be a good foundation for Mark Pope moving forward. They're going to be a tough out because they can score the basketball. John Calipari said it the other day. He's like, you got to be able to score in the NCAA tournament, and BYU can do that. And I think a lot of folks were expecting them to completely fall off or just die in the Big 12. That may have been the case for Cincinnati, but BYU is still holding strong. They're still ranked this deep into the season. Folks, this is who they are. This is their identity. They are a good basketball team. I apologize to any Cougars fans that had to keep telling folks like, hey, we're a good team. We're a good team. We're here this deep into the season. I think we have enough of a resume to say that BYU's good, and I'm good with calling them good.
Yeah, they are good. They've got 7 players who average 9 or more points. So that goes to that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of players that average that many points per game. They're a top 10 offensive team in the country. And I think that they're the probably perfect example of what a Sweet 16 team in college basketball looks like. A team that's going to probably be able to boat race the first team they play because they are so good offensively. They'll play a better team the second time around, and they're good enough offensively to scratch out that win. But then they're going to play a real good team that's good defensively, and I think it's all going to come to a halt then. So I'm buying BYU if buying BYU means that they're going to go to the Sweet 16 and nothing else. That's what my purchase level on BYU is.
Virginia. We know about how great their defense is, but they just don't play with any tempo, which isn't a surprise. And the Pitt game, I don't know what I witnessed because their defense just went to hell. Pitt, I think, had uh I don't know what the stat was, but like they had 5 or 6 players with 2+3s in the game. I mean, Pitt
Mhm.
was just draining everything from 3. It was really quite an anomaly. And I'm kind of going with how I felt with St. Mary's, not for the exact reasoning, but Virginia just came off of got an 8-game winning streak snap. They've been playing really good basketball, rising up the rankings of the ACC. But I thought it was a little bit much for people to say they could win the ACC. No, the clear 2 best teams are Duke and North Carolina. And so for Virginia, I think that Pitt game, it rearing its ugly head, brought a lot of people back and doused water on some folks that were kind of frantic and going crazy about Virginia. I'm still I'm still out on Virginia.
Yeah, I agree. Do you know what the term DFL means, Sub?
Uh, no, what does it mean?
It's dead fucking last, and that's what they are in tempo in the country right now.
Good
Is
Lord.
is last, and I know that Virginia doesn't play fast. And just full disclosure, St. Mary's isn't that far ahead of them in tempo. South Carolina isn't that far ahead of them in tempo, and Houston's not far ahead of them in tempo. They're all in like the bottom 20, 25 here. To go along with that, though, Virginia ranks 410th nationally in rebounding. There aren't even 410 D1 teams, right? So those two factors, and they don't have what's made Virginia work in the past is that they have studs on their team, borderline, if not bona fide NBA players to play within this system, which is what makes Houston's system, which is a similar system or similar style of play, work. Virginia doesn't have that. And even if you look at like a St. Mary's, why I'm more bullish on St. Mary's is they are a better offense. They're a decent offensive team. They're not a great offensive team. They're a decent offensive team. Virginia in years past, they've had efficient offense, but not high scoring offense. They're neither this year. So they're not even efficient in how they're 120th in offensive efficiency this year. So if you're that slow, you have to score more than 50% of your possessions. And what we saw against Pitt is a perfect example of why I don't buy them, because they can make it through the regular season doing this, but when you're playing balls to the wall in the tournament, you can't be that bad offensively playing at that slow of a pace. So I'm out on Virginia.
They dominated Pitt too down low. And I'm not the biggest 3-point variance guy. Like the other team shooting a bunch of threes, we got to match that. But that was a clear cut example of Pitt taking a ton of threes, making them, and Virginia saying, no, let's just keep trying to dominate the paint. 3 is better than 2. Like
Well,
that's what it
right.
was.
And if you look at, everyone got kind of high of them because of this win streak they were on. But if you look at the actual teams they beat, I'll go real quick and listing them. It's Va Tech, Georgia Tech, NC State, Louisville, Notre Dame, Clemson, Miami, Florida State. We're not exactly talking like murderers row here. Some of those teams are okay.
Mhm.
Some of them are not. So we're not exactly talking about like the highest level of competition. So I think their record has been elevated because they haven't had to play that North Carolina, that Duke again in conference play.
Yeah. So we're both out on Virginia. FAU completely out. I'm trying to warn folks, don't fall for the, and I tweeted this earlier before they entered conference play. I tweeted FAU is going to be that team that could lose in the first round or they'll go to the Elite Eight. They're not going to the Elite Eight. I'm very confident in saying that. They've played a bunch of close games in that conference. They've lost a few close games. They've won more than they've lost, but they've been in overtime the last couple of games. They play down to their opponent. I cannot trust this team to go deep. They're not mimicking last year's Final Four run. I don't know if they get to the second weekend. They've played with fire way too often this season. They have the same veteran group. They have the team that took them there for the most part, Boyd and John L. Davis and Vlad Golden, Dusty May, of course. I don't think they've handled being hunted in conference very well. And I think they've developed terrible habits that are going to bite them in the first weekend of the NCAA tournament, completely out on FAU based on what they've shown me, as opposed to what I've seen last year and also their potential out on FAU.
Yeah, I agree. I'm out on FAU. They're just too, like you said, too much of a roller coaster ride here. John L. Davis, I mean, is actually having a good year. He's shooting like 50% from the field, which is great for someone with his, volume. But the only thing I could see is if they make a run is they got to have some really good matchups against some teams that just happen to not be that good defensively. And then John L. Davis has to pretty much score 25 plus or more, I think, in those games. So they're going to have a combination of like playing if they could play like a Kansas in the Sweet 16, that might be a sneaky good game because people be high on Kansas, but and they just don't happen to be as good this year. But I'm out on FAU. I just don't see them having the defensive prowess or the consistency level to win 2-3 games in the tournament, let alone 4, 5, 6 games in the tournament. So
yeah, against this level of competition. So very last one of the top 25, Oklahoma. I don't have much to say. I don't know if you have much to say, but they just don't move me at all. Oklahoma is going to be one half of a game where we're going to look at it in the bracket and we're going to pick a winner between Oklahoma and whomever, and we're just going to move on with our lives. As in, we're the winner of that game is probably not going to go any further than the second game of the NCAA tournament. They do not move me whatsoever. It reminds me of the Maryland West Virginia game last year in the tournament, which was very good, with I think Maryland winning that game in overtime. But I remember when that matchup came out in the bracket, I was just like, who cares? I do not care because neither of these teams are making any noise. And that's exactly what happened. Maryland lost in the second game. That's kind of how I look at Oklahoma as well.
yeah, I mean, currently they're a 6 seed in bracketology. I am almost sure. Just look what their schedule is looking like. I think they're still going to make the tournament.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean. But I could see this being an 8-9 game that they're in, which is the
That's
exact
what
that I
Maryland,
know.
West Virginia was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Which is literally just us going, I don't know, coin flip it. Who cares? I have that same exact thought because they still now I will give them one small bit of credit here, or not credit, but opportunity. Their 3 of their 4 next games are Kansas, Iowa State, and Houston, with 2 of them being at home. This is either going to be you're in the 8-9 game or you're a top 5 seed. This next 3 game stretch is going to determine. So I know we use February 14th as the general line here, but they have 3 very specific, very big games, 2 of them being at home, that are really going to determine their season to me. If they can win 2 of those 3 games, okay. Maybe Oklahoma's a top 6 seed. They can avoid some of those. They can avoid the bigger matchups until at least the second weekend. If they lose 2 of 3, they're in that 8-9 game, and it's gonna be coin flip to who gets blown out by Purdue in the next round, essentially.
Yeah.
Or UConn.
I mean, and that's the whole purpose of this segment. I've seen enough of Oklahoma where I'm very confident they're going to lose 2 of those 3. They might go 0 for 3. And this is coming off of a shellacking against Baylor.
Florida Atlantic, Oklahoma 8-9 game. Give it to me.
I'd probably go with Oklahoma. I'd go with
the most
Oklahoma.
Entertaining, like worst game, maybe. That game could go so many different directions. So I'm rooting for FAU Oklahoma 8-9 game for the right to go get smoked by UConn.
Just outside of the top 25, Taylor, these are some really interesting teams. Let's keep it moving. Washington State. I know last couple episodes you weren't very high on them, and I still am. Here on February 14th, they're not flukes. I think they're tough as shit. They don't allow you to go on runs. You can't get kill shots against Washington State. They will always hang around in games and be competitive. And I think that is what's going to make them a tough out in the NCAA tournament. They're not a second weekend team. I doubt that. Who knows if they're even in right now? I think they should be in. But Washington State, what they've done this entire season, again, very good team. Kyle Smith very well could be Pac-12 Coach of the Year. Kyle Smith needs to get a lot more love, but of course, folks aren't staying up for West Coast games. Washington State is a good basketball team as we sit here on Valentine's Day. And I really hope that they make the NCAA tournament. I think they deserve it more so than a 10-loss team in a better conference. Sorry.
Yeah, I am on Washington State as well. If you look at their losses, they have a bad loss at California, right? Their other losses: Mississippi State, Santa Clara is sneaky decent, Utah, at Colorado. That's certainly not a. Neither of those losses are bad on the road. Losing to Oregon at the time, not a bad loss. So, and they beaten Arizona, they've beaten
Yeah.
USC, who sucks.
Boise
But
State too, right? Don't they
I'm
have a
just
win
saying
over
some of the
Boise?
teams that were previously thought of to be good before the season started. So I'm pro Wazoo, and they do have to play Arizona one more time at Arizona. But other than that, I mean, they get Stanford at home, they get USC at home, UCLA and Washington at home. So their schedule actually sets up really well for them going into the tournament. Miles Rice is a very
Awesome
good
story.
basketball player, and he's a great story. And so for him to make the tournament, for them to make a tournament, they could quite literally be the darlings of the tournament if just because of the story. And people like Wazoo, like nationally.
Yeah.
They're not rooting for them, but when they pop up, nobody's anti Wazoo unless you're a UW person. I don't think anybody hates Wazoo. So I feel like that if they can get into the tournament, which I think they will, I think they can get some momentum, and they'll be one of the best stories with Rice there.
Shout out Jeremy Harden, great friend of the program.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to the Carolinas, man. We've talked Duke, we've talked North Carolina, we talked South Carolina. Let's finish it off, I guess, with Clemson. For me, I got to believe it till I see it. It's kind of like the Gonzaga thing. They've shut me up. They're going to go to the NCAA tournament. So my stance in January was they stink. They might miss the dance again after starting so well in November and December, but they've rebounded pretty well here in February. And I'm fairly confident, unless the wheels completely fall off for Brad Brownell's club, they will be in the NCAA tournament, which is a nice step forward for Clemson. But from there, how many games they win? If you told me 1.5 games for Clemson to win, I'd probably take the under there. I don't see them as a second weekend team whatsoever. Maybe they'll win the first game. So I'm just I'm a little bit higher on Clemson, let's say, than I was beginning of the season. And that is only because they've shut me up and they've proven that they can actually string some wins together when it matters, when it counts, which is the January and the February months when March starts rolling around. So a little higher on Clemson, which is to say they'll make the tournament. Congrats.
I would be even higher on them than that. They have
Okay.
a legit opportunity, I think, and I don't know if you have it pulled up, but tell me if I'm wrong. I think they could go undefeated to end the season in the ACC from here on out. They don't play anybody that I mean they play Miami as we record this, NC State at home, at Georgia Tech, Florida State at home, Pitt at home, at Notre Dame, Syracuse at home, and at Wake Forest. I could see that they
Oh,
maybe
I
lose at
definitely don't
Wake.
see that. I think you're undervaluing folks like Syracuse, Wake, Pitt. I don't see they have not done enough to show me that they can handle that business. Me personally, I disagree.
I'm just saying that they're not going to be more than 3 to 5 3-point dogs in any of those games. I think they have a real chance at actually doing that because they've gotten a lot of their tough ACC games out of the way, and they've won a couple of those as well. In terms of they beat North Carolina uh, last week, they already beat Syracuse at Syracuse last week as well. So I'm pro Clemson. I was also very high on Clemson in the preseason. They dipped for me, but they've kind of come back, just as you said. So I'm going to continue what I was thinking in preseason, and that they are good. And I think that they're scheduled. And even if they don't go undefeated, that's fine. And I'm fine with being wrong with that. But they've put themselves in a good enough position where they're going to get a good seed in the tournament. They're not going to go 4-4 in these last 8 games, in my opinion, right? I think they're going to do just fine in terms of that. They're currently projecting as a top half seed right now, and I don't think that ends any worse than like a 5 or 6 seed for them. So I could definitely see them with a win or two, and maybe even maybe two. I think they could get to the second weekend, but I don't think they're going to win in more than 1 or 2 games.
Georgia Tech's going to beat them. Already got Duke and Carolina under their
There you
belt.
go.
Watch,
Yeah,
man.
why not? Yeah, right. Why not? Sure.
Zags. I can't quit them. And I think this has stayed pretty even for me throughout the entire season. I'm not higher on them post Valentine's Day as I was pre. And that is to say, I still think they make the NCAA tournament. And the only reason I do think that, Taylor, is because they're going to win the WCC. They're not going to get an at-large bid, although that Kentucky game certainly helped. but I think Gonzaga is going to win the WCC and they'll make the NCAA tournament. So everything's been pretty steady as it relates to the Zags. That really did show me something. I was so shocked that Gonzaga was, I forget what they were, dogs, but it was like 3.5 or like 4, maybe. I don't know. The Kyle Wilcher custody game is what I like to call it. And they won outright. I was expecting Kentucky to demolish them at home, but they didn't. And so I still think there's that fight. Like there's that little bit deep down inside of Mark Few and the culture that he's built, and Anton Watson, who I absolutely love. They've lost to St. Mary's. I totally understand that. This may sound illogical, but Anton Watson, in my opinion, is the best player in that conference. And I think he's going to will them. And again, I have to see the Goliath die. Like I have to see the king of the WCC perish before I make any bold claims. So Gonzaga is going to make the tournament, which is the same thing that I've been saying, because it led up, actually, Taylor, real quick. It led up because I was like, maybe Gonzaga's going to beat St. Mary's in the WCC. That's their only shot. Like, I think that might happen. I'm pretty confident in it because they might lose again in the regular season, and we're going to see it for a third time. Zags, I'm steady.
I'm out on Gonzaga still. I mean, beating Kentucky by name sounds great, right? But if I told you that they just beat the 110th ranked defensive team, you'd be like, oh, what did they play? Just another West Coast Conference team? Because that's pretty much where let me put it to you this way, Sue. There are 3 teams in the West Coast Conference that are ranked better defensively than Kentucky. So we have to separate, I think, that the fact that they beat Kentucky, which don't get me wrong, by name and where the game was
Q1
at.
win, right?
Well, okay, sure. But it's kind of like when
when was the last time St. Mary's had a Q1 win?
It's kind of like when 2 bad SEC football teams play each other and one wins and goes, oh, yeah, like, no, they're back. It's like, well, if 2 not so good teams win, but we just recognize their name, that doesn't mean that they're better than anybody else. And I think that's what this game was. I think this game was a 9-4 Auburn playing like an 8-5 Mississippi State and being like, oh, yeah, look, well, that's a big SEC. It's like, well, yeah, but they're still so far behind the rest of everybody else. So Kentucky's not good defensively by any metric, by any anything, right? So, and I mean, Kentucky's lost. That was their 3rd loss in a row. Shoot, there was even discussion this last week if Kentucky was going to fall out of the tournament. So I think if
that's ridiculous. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but if you look at their last month, it's not like it's been great either. They did just beat Ole Miss, which is apparently now a good win for them, I guess, just given where they're at right now. But I think that we got to separate the fact that Kentucky and Gonzaga, this isn't Anthony Davis playing, Karnowski down low here. I mean, this is a very, very JV version of that game. And so I think neither of those teams are good. I think neither of them are going anywhere. I know we're not even bringing up Kentucky right now, but I'm out. I'm equally out on them because they can't guard me, you, the horror on the street corner, right? Like they can't guard anybody. And Gonzaga they don't do anything. Gonzaga's fine, but they don't do anything so elite that it's going to make me feel good about them. And if they're not good, if they're not doing anything on an elite level and they get to play Pepperdine and Pacific and these type of teams every week, and you still aren't cracking like the metrics that we need you to crack to be a good basketball team, then that is very troublesome to me. So I'm out on Gonzaga.
Florida in the SEC. I like Florida, and I think they're rising right now. And the last month has done a lot for me. I've been pretty steadfast in trying to stick with Todd Golden, and it's actually been rewarding a little bit here. I think they're on the right side of the bubble. They're not firmly in the NCAA tournament, but they'd have to really, really mess up to be out. They're solid offensively, not that great defensively, but they can rebound the hell out of the basketball on the offensive end, Taylor. I think they're getting about 40% of their missed shots. That's huge. That's extra possessions. That's potentially extra fouls. That's easier looks from the free throw line if you're getting fouled. That's layups. I really like how Florida's playing. Now, they almost shit themselves against LSU, which was not great. And I know I'm going to look, this was when Kentucky was really good. All right. And they were rolling, but they barely lost to that Kentucky team at home. And again, I'm really not trying to gas up Kentucky, but I like Florida. I actually think they're going to make the NCAA tournament, which is a prime example of this cutoff date for me, right? Why we wait 2-3 weeks ago, a month ago, folks were saying Florida stinks. This is going to be another average year under Todd Golden, and the pressure is going to mount up. I think they're going to continue to rise. I think they're taking small steps in the right direction, and they will make the NCAA tournament. So I like Florida.
Florida to me is like inverse Oklahoma. They're like equally as good offensively and defensively and vice versa. And to me, there's nothing you could take my exact answer from Oklahoma and apply it to Florida. They don't move me at all. I could see them also being just pick a Florida school for that Oklahoma 8-9 game, whether it be FAU or just F here, right? Like they don't move me at all. I know that a couple episodes ago I talked about how I haven't really watched a ton of Florida. Of course, that LSU game was not a great example of a game for me to watch to focus on them a little more because you're right. They were 10, 11-point favorites and barely eked that one out. They got 2 games against Alabama left, Florida does, which are going to be really good indicators, I think, to me of where they stand. Because if they're better than I'm very pro Alabama. And so if they're better than Alabama, even if they beat Alabama one of those 2 times, I'll be more bullish on Florida. If they get swept by Alabama, then yeah, go play in that 8-9 game with Oklahoma or FAU or any of those other teams.
But and that's fair. The point that I'm making though is I think a lot of folks prior to February 14th were saying no, Florida's not going to be in the NCAA tournament. They played their way.
I agree.
I think we both agree they're a tournament team, and that's why you wait, folks. That's why you just take it easy. Just a few more, Taylor. Michigan State. I'm not giving up on them. Damn it! I refuse to do it. I'm not giving up on Michigan State. The talent is there. I forget which team you referenced for a favorable schedule. I think it was Clemson. I'm going to pull that with Michigan State. I think they have a favorable schedule the rest of the way. They just beat Illinois a couple games ago. Now, with the exception of at Purdue, I think Michigan State goes to West Lafayette. That is a loss. But the remaining games outside of that, very, very favorable for them. And the Minnesota loss was a bit troubling, although Minnesota's decent. They're okay. They're not awful roadkill. I cannot give up on Michigan State, and I think they're going to enter the Big Ten tournament very hot and probably rattle off a couple wins in that conference tournament. And we'll see them in the NCAA tournament again. And I don't know if they're a second weekend team, but the fact that we're talking about them, I'm even bringing that up. I don't know how you want to view it as a Michigan State fan. It's a disappointment potentially, but I think they can win a game or two in the NCAA tournament. I'm not dead on Michigan just yet, despite how many people have been wanting to write their eulogy.
Well, interestingly, I think if you would have asked a Michigan State fan preseason if they would finish second in the Big Ten, if they would be disappointed, knowing that Purdue was going to win it, you'd probably say no. That probably would fit the expectation. Well, their win with Illinois essentially gives them the opportunity to still finish second because of that schedule in the Big Ten. And that's what's crazy to me is maybe the Big Ten maybe hasn't been as good. Well, not maybe. They haven't been as good as I think we expected this year. But for Michigan State to still potentially finish second in the Big Ten, that gives them an opportunity to roll off, as you said, a few games in their conference tournament. And if they go to the conference tournament finals and play Purdue, win or lose, that's all a guy like Izzo needs to prep his team for the tournament. So I think there's going to be a lot of value in potentially betting on this team as not very well seeded in the tournament. But like you said, they've got one of the best players in the country. They've got the coach. And I think given their schedule, they have a pretty light schedule heading into the tournament, into the conference tournament. And those conference tournament games, I think, are going to be the perfect ramp up to the tournament for them. So I'm going to buy Michigan State.
Now, here's the thing with Sparty.
Even though I've been just shitting on them for 4 months in a row.
You have been.
I have. And yet here we are. God damn it.
That's why you got to just be patient, man. And I've been wrong too, right? And I'm going to get this next team I've been wrong on. But Michigan State, like after the loss to JMU, after losing to Arizona, these other teams, everyone just wants to write them off. And I guess the question is, and as a fan, you enter this season with Final Four aspirations. I'm not buying that. Sparty's not going to the Final Four, but to have these discussions about how they suck and they're not going to make the NCAA tournament, They're not going to finish in the top half of the Big Ten. It's foolish. It's foolish to discount a guy like Tom Izzo and the talent that they have. And Michigan's still and I think they just wrapped up a great win against, not great one, excuse me. I just threw that out there. I think they just wrapped up a win against Penn State, though, last night. Ole Miss. Sadly, my agenda is dying a slow and painful death. They've gone from a team that I'm pretty confident, or I shouldn't say pretty confident, but I was like, I think they can make the NCAA tournament. I said this way back in like May or June. And then when South Carolina was rolling, I said South Carolina is going to make the NCAA tournament, which was a great take, hug for me. But then I said, I think Ole Miss might as well. That is slowly but surely dying, and it sucks. Ole Miss's schedule just out of conference, which it doesn't move the needle enough to the point where you can be like a couple games below 500 in the SEC. And I think they only have like 5 or 6 wins in the SEC, which is still a really big step up, because I think Ken Palm only projected them at 2 wins in conference, and they've done a good job. But Ole Miss out. Sorry, I don't think you're making the NCAA tournament. And I was high on you pre-Valentine's Day. I got to be a realist. It's over.
Yeah, I agree. They're not good enough at anything that they can just hang their hat on something. And I have to bring up St. Mary's again, but even if St. Mary's is struggling, they can at least hang their hat on that they're very good defensively. Ole Miss isn't good. They're good defensively. They're not good offensively. They're okay. They can't rely on anything specifically to be like, okay, hey, at least going into this game, we can do this or that. I don't have confidence in any specific part of their game that's going to put them over the top. They still play a couple ranked teams in the SEC on the way out here. I think they also play pretty slowly as well, which doesn't help. If you go back to those Texas Tech teams that Chris Beard didn't play quickly as well. It's kind of almost like a Virginia situation, just not being good at anything, though, is that they don't play fast enough to play as bad as they do at times. And so I'm out on Ole Miss as well. But I'm not out on this being a successful year for them, no matter how it finishes.
Great year.
Right.
Great year. Already a great year.
Right.
Unless Chris Beard takes off to Ohio
State. Ohio State, yeah, right.
Like we had mentioned.
Or whoever opens up, or please, well, actually, I don't care if he goes to UCLA at this point. I actually don't give a shit about UCLA.
That'd be fun.
So
yeah. True. Yeah. No, we're gone. Big 12, Big 10.
Yeah. Whatever.
I'm going to lump these last two together before we get to segments, Taylor. Texas and Memphis. I believe Texas and Memphis actually played a tournament game like in 2009. Jordan Hamilton. I could be wrong. I don't know. But Texas and Memphis, I kind of lump them in the Oklahoma space. Memphis may not make the tournament, actually. Texas is kind of like Oklahoma. I wanted to believe in Texas, and I was saying preseason and early in the season that they're going to shoot up the rankings. I said that with Bama. Bama shot up the rankings. I thought Texas was going to do the same thing. They came in at 20. They're really just checking in and out at like 24, being unranked. So Texas, unfortunately, you don't move me. I thought the addition of Max Abmas was going to be great. He's been fine. Everything's just been fine. Texas is going to make the NCAA tournament, but they'll make it. And I thought I had higher hopes for them. I had much higher hopes for Texas pre-February 14th, but as we sit here today, I can't fool myself any longer. Memphis, they're not very good. The metrics don't love them, but their conference is still somehow winnable, Taylor. They went through a rough stretch. You talk about all the teams that went through a regression. Memphis is slowly cobbling the pieces back together, and I'm not yet ready to give up on my prediction that they're going to win the AAC. I don't think I ever had an inclination or a prediction that they were going to do something big in the NCAA tournament, but I think a lot of folks have written Memphis off. I think a lot of folks are saying that they're cooked. I don't think that's true for Penny Hardaway's squad. I think there's still enough season left for them. So I'm going to stick with Memphis. Texas, I'm a bit disappointed in, though, I have to say.
I think the only participation that Memphis is going to have in the NCAA tournament is that Memphis hosts the first round of the tournament this year. Ooh. That's about the only thing that I have in relation to them making the tournament. They're just not good offensively or defensively.
They're not.
They're really not. I mean, look back to the previous team we just talked about and how their Ole Miss like really can't hang their hat on anything. Like Memphis don't even got a hat. to hang. Like at least Ole Miss got the hat. They just can't put it anywhere. Texas doesn't even have the hat, right? Or Memphis doesn't even have the hat. So I'm out on them. And Texas is not even are they the third best team in Texas? Tech is better than them.
Tech's better. Baylor's better.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Fourth
Uh,
best team in Texas.
they're
Baylor's
better
better.
than TCU. Houston.
Houston's better. Yeah, I mean, but if this is the discussion point, then that's all that
Mm.
you need to know about Texas, right? They're not even as good as Texas Tech, whose coach got fired mid-season, year before last, unceremoniously, right? And I mean,
Texas
obviously
kind of went through the
their
same
coach
thing.
got fired too, but they hired from within though. They hired with there wasn't a huge coaching search, whatever. So it's interesting that again we're talking about Texas and Ohio State still not being good at anything, and I still don't, at basketball. Again, that's where we started this episode, and somehow we've bookended it all the way to somehow these schools with the unlimited resources aren't good at this. So I'm out on Texas. They will make the tournament as a very maybe double-digit seed, even. Big 12, very tough conference, of course, basketball. It'll lighten up. Funny enough, it'll lighten up for Texas next year, moving to the SEC, which is the only conference you could say that going, from Big 12 to out. But I'm out on them doing anything. They also could play Oklahoma. Actually, that'd be great. Play Oklahoma. That would be actually really cool. I don't think you're allowed to have that happen.
You're not.
Yeah.
But
damn it. They're going to be in that range though. That would be great.
Yeah. Good whirlwind, Taylor. A lot of teams that we got through, and it actually speaks real quick to Texas on the importance of seizing the opportunity. They were up double digits, I think, on Miami with the right to go to the Final Four, and they kind of blew it. They could have absolutely been there. So, and here they are a year later. Same thing with Kansas State.
You just never know. I mean, I know it's such a cliche thing to say, especially given the Super Bowl this last week. And all that type of stuff. Like you just never really know when your next opportunity is going to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know I bring up Packers and Arizona all the time, and I don't mean to belabor this point, right? But if you would have told me in 2010 with the team and the coach that Arizona had and was putting together, and the team and the quarterback that the Packers had at that time, that I wasn't going to see another Final Four or another Super Bowl appearance out of either of those two teams, I'd have told you were out of your fucking mind. Right. Yeah. And I think you probably would have said the same thing.
I would have.
Right. And so that's just a perfect point to say that you really can't miss these opportunities. Texas did that. I'm not sure when they're going to make it back, but you just can't. Point being, you just can't miss these opportunities when they're available to you.
Yeah. All right, Taylor, we took a week off. Let's get to Damel Dimes. Okay. Last week, you went 1-2. You took Quinnipiac -8 over St. Peter's. That hit. Oregon -5.5 against Washington. Did not hit Washington with a furious comeback. Yes, on the road.
And they lost by 5, right? It was 5.
I think it was 5.
Yeah.
And then Colorado -13. That missed as well. So that puts you at 22, 20, and 3 on the year. We're still above 500. Everything's all right.
What was that Colorado score too? That was a close one too, I think.
No, it was still double digits. Like I think Colorado ended up winning by 11 or 12.
I know. So,
let me see.
So we were essentially within a point and a half, unfortunately.
Colorado won by 12. Yeah.
That's frustrating. But that is sports betting in a nutshell. So we're going to try and get it back here, and we're going to start with SMU. SMU goes on the road today, against Tulane. SMU favored by 2.5. This SMU team is one that I've been monitoring. Both these teams can score the basketball pretty well. One team is significantly better defensively and at rebounding, and that's SMU. So we're going to go SMU by 2.5 on the road against Tulane, against the Green Wave. We're going to go back to the West here, and we got Weber State playing one of the worst teams in college basketball, and that's Idaho, University of Idaho. Not a good basketball team, not a good athletic program, not a good anything, right? Weber State, they're favored by just 6.5 against. God, I mean, there's not a single like positive thing to say about Idaho. So we're going Weber State, decent basketball team playing a very bad basketball team in Idaho, and then we're gonna go with a team that really started the year as the darling of college basketball, and I ain't heard shit about them in like a month at least, and that's James Madison. They're still one of the highest
Mm.
scoring teams in college basketball, a team that we will for sure have discussions about as we are, I think, a month. Are we a month away from Selection Sunday?
Over a month, a little over a month away.
You're a month and 2 days away from
Month and
Selection
2 days.
Sunday.
Okay.
I
So
think we'll have a lot of yeah, right, whatever. We'll have a lot of discussion about James Madison. I have a feeling here in about a month and 2 days. I would say so. I'm taking James Madison by a big margin, by 13.5 on the road at Georgia or at home against Georgia State. They just score the shit out of the basketball. They rebound the basketball. They do a lot of things well. We've seen that obviously throughout this year. So I'm going James Madison by 13.5. We're going Weber State by 6.5, and we're going SMU by, what was that one? 2.5.
2.5. Great stuff, Taylor. Not so mid. Who are we highlighting this week?
I am highlighting a man from High Point University.
Okay.
Right? Let me make sure I pronounce his name right. This is live on air. We're gonna do it live. Okay. So his name, and I don't want to mispronounce it, is God dang it. If my computer would work here, I apologize to the crowd. Jesus is Keza Giffa. Excuse me. Keza Giffa. Okay.
Okay.
Do you know anything about this guy?
Nothing. Enlighten
Okay.
me, please.
Well, last week in a win over Gardner Webb, he went 1 of 15, Sub, from the field. And you might think to yourself, this man played poorly. Well, not so fast, my friend, because he did go 13 of 13 from the free throw line. So 1 of 15 from the field, but 13 for 13 from the free throw line in a win over Gardner Webb. So we're going to highlight him because in a way he led his team to victory. I've never seen a guy miss 14 shots while leading his team to victory, but there you go.
Can the coach draw
Giffa.
KG, of course.
Yeah.
Can
on the road too. On the road.
Can the coach just draw up some plays to get him to the free throw line? Maybe he'll hit some shots from there.
Played 34 minutes off the bench too, which is even crazier. He played more minutes than all but one of their starters. I don't know enough about High Point to know what their rotation is, but very interesting that a guy on the bench can go 1 for 15 and in a win. So Keza Giffa.
That's an awesome one. I'm glad you brought that out. I'm going to go to the great state of Tennessee. Okay. I got to highlight Tennessee Tech. They knock off Tennessee State by 20. They won 70-50. Why is that so impressive? Well, Tennessee Tech, they currently have a record of 9-17, whereas Tennessee State is 15-11, which, by the way, like that record just, does that not seem like a lot of games already? Or have all other teams played 26 games? I guess Jerome is kind of around the corner, but credit to Tennessee Tech. They had 2 scorers in the starting lineup, both scoring 19 points. And then they had a man off the bench with 10 dropping 70. It was a very competitive first half. Tennessee State was up 29-27. And then Tennessee Tech, as they're known to do, Taylor, that's a joke. I don't know anything about Tennessee Tech, but they just accelerated in the second half, winning it 43-21. So I'm assuming that's a rivalry down there in Tennessee. Hat tip to the underdog Tennessee Tech team for beating Tennessee State. That's my not so mid. Lane violation, my friend. What do you got?
Have we talked about this ref that got suspended from the A-Sun? Have you seen this story?
I may have heard about it, but I didn't really read it. What happened?
So when it happened, obviously, it's going to be a big surprise. Not a ton of people watching A-Sun games all the time. So there was kind of a lack of action from the conference. But in a game against Jacksonville and North Alabama, I believe, the ref called Jacksonville's coach the N-word.
Yeah. Oh, so I saw the Jacksonville coach go over to the AD.
Yeah, that was the reasoning. And the A-Sun actually put out a statement this week that said the Atlantic Sun Conference has suspended an official involved in an in-game interaction with Jacksonville University head men's basketball coach Jordan Mincy due to conduct not in alignment with the expectations of the A-Sun, which means that it happened. It happened, right? So
how is that not a bigger deal? like a
Right,
bigger
and
story.
it was right, it should be, very much so. So the ref's name, well, let's make it a big deal.
Yeah.
The ref's name is, Adam James. Adam James. Uh, yeah, Adam James and, Joe Prince were the refs involved here. So, yeah, not an ideal situation, using, racial,
Jeez.
derogatory terms, in the middle of a basketball game towards a coach or to, well, anyone in general. But, yeah, so I think that's a pretty clear lane violation here.
My goodness. Wow. I didn't know that. I can't believe it's not a bigger story. That's insane. Good call out, T. My lane violation is actually for schedule makers. It's a day of love. It's a day of happiness. It's a day of joy with your partner, right? So why the hell are we scheduling Yukon and DePaul on Valentine's Day? This is going to be a bloodbath. It tips off in about 30 minutes. And I had the right mind, Taylor. I was seriously contemplating going down to Wintrust and chaining myself in silent protest to the hoop or the net just to make sure this game wasn't played. I don't know why we're still trotting DePaul out there. I kind of wish ADs like they got rid of Holtmann mid season or abbreviated his season. I'm not asking ADs to get rid of DePaul's players, but I kind of want them to just be like, you know what? You don't have to play these games. And for the love of God, do not trot out there against UConn. You still have 30 minutes to say and to preserve yourself. All right. There is no honor in getting slaughtered. And that's exactly what's going to happen to DePaul here in 30. But just devastated that the schedule makers would put such a terrible game, a bloodbath, really, on Valentine's Day. The only other thing, though, I will mention in terms of scheduling and a game that's going on right now is that Detroit is playing IUPUI. Detroit has not won a basketball game this entire season, Taylor. They were favored by 5.5. All right, which might speak volumes of IUPUI. I'm trying to find the score, but last I checked, Detroit is up 14 with 12 minutes to go, trying to get their very first win. So that's not my lane violation. The lane violation is UConn DePaul. But man, fingers crossed Detroit can close this out.
Dude, thank you for saying that. I'm gonna go live bet that they lose right now.
No, Taylor, they're up 14 at 12 timeout.
This is so perfect. Hold on. Yeah, as you're not a betting man, so you don't understand
No,
this is like
you're
this is
ruining
like
it, man.
hearing like the golden goose is down the street and it's just like you're not gonna go see it, So appreciate
Oh, and
that.
26, my boy. All right, let's go ahead, get on out of here on some positivity. Easy layup. What do you got?
How about Darian Williams? You know anything about his story this week, Sue?
No. What
Really?
is
Come on.
happening with me? I'm
Come on,
sorry.
man. Darian Williams, the first college basketball player in 14 years to go 30, 11, and 3 on 100, 100, 100 shooting. Perfect from the field, perfect from 3, and perfect from the 3 free throw line. I know you heard about this. I know that this is something that you're aware of for Texas Tech.
I did, but yes, I did, but it already kind of got replaced by Baylor Shireman's first ever triple double
Sure.
with what points, rebounds, and was it assists? It couldn't have been just assists, right? It was something
Something
along those
you're
lines.
right. Yep.
My mind's jumbled, but there have been a lot of firsts
So
this season.
essentially the opposite of my not so mid. Instead of going 1 of 15 from the field, this guy was perfect.
Perfect.
Right. For
I
31
like that.
points, no less.
Oh, very impressive. And Tech's playing incredibly well. All right, my easy layup, Taylor. We're going to go ahead, get on out of here on this. Let me share my screen real quick. But it's Coleman Hawkins' Twitter. Okay, I have to highlight Coleman Hawkins' Twitter. He is the KD of like college basketball on Twitter. What I mean by that is he's one of my favorite athletes to follow because he's hilarious and he truly does not give a damn. I think it's so funny. So on your screen right now is a photoshopped image of Patrick Mahomes in a Bears jersey. And Coleman Hawkins says, "At Chiefs, you're welcome." Why is that funny? Why is that witty? Why is that subtle? Because after Illinois destroyed Michigan, the media asked Juwan Howard about Terrence Shannon's play. And Juwan Howard was like, "Yeah, I know all about Terrence Shannon. We recruited him." Now, all of that is good and well. A lot of coaches will say that. He said, "I'm very happy for him, very proud of him. Very good." Like we hear that all the time. But then Juwan Howard with his, wry smile basically says, "You're welcome," as in you're welcome for getting Terrence Shannon because you recruited him. It makes, I mean, it's so ridiculous. It reeks, I should say, speaks and reeks of a man who I don't think cares anymore. They're an 8-win team there at Michigan. Juwan Howard, I think, knows his time is slowly but surely ticking. Maybe not slowly anymore, but to say you're welcome to Illinois, I thought that was hilarious in its own right because of how absurd it was. But Coleman Hawkins tweeting out a photoshopped image of Patrick Mahomes in a Bears jersey and tagging the Chiefs. Hey, you're welcome with the prayer hands. The guy is so funny. The only other tweet that I want to bring up, Taylor, from Coleman Hawkins, and this actually might have been my favorite, is when a Illinois fan who looks to be an elderly woman, Patty Crow Scott at PV Scott 59, she said, I probably should not say this at my age, but Quincy Guerrier is so handsome. And Coleman Hawkins replies, no need to apologize, ma'am. Y'all are essentially the same age, or y'all are almost the same age.
So good.
It's so freaking funny. Coleman Hawkins giving us the Twitter content that we need. He's also a really good player and a fun player to watch. I like Coleman Hawkins a lot. I think a lot of Big Ten opposing fan bases find him as a villain, but he's such a versatile defender. He's going to play at the next level. But Coleman Hawkins, man, I hope you're able to take your tweeting game to the next level as well. He's my easy layup. I love it. Great episode, Taylor. I know this was a beefy one. I appreciate you spending time here on this Valentine's Day. We're going to go ahead, get on out of here, and actually spend time with our significant others.
Very patient wives. Yes.
And your daughter. We'll catch you next time here on Theater and College Hoops.